My mom looked at me and she goes, "You really shouldn't brag. If you're that good, other people will talk about you." I've seen countless people come back and I can tell in their post-op, they're back to their normal personality because they're like bubbly and they're excited and they're talking, their heads higher, they're looking you more in the eye. Just they're more confident is the bottom line.
People don't get enough of these feel-good interviews where people have combined their passion and their talents and their intellect, and you make the world a more beautiful place. What's not to love? Welcome to today's podcast episode, and I am so excited to have a guest today who is an amazing man, an amazing physician, an amazing surgeon who works with only the most amazing women. So rather than me go on and on and on and bore you to tears, allow me the absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Andrew Campbell, a world-renowned plastic surgeon who is the plastic surgeon of the plastic surgeons, and his fantastic surgical care coordinator, because he can't do a great job without her, Lauren Hickey. So welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
All righty. I am so excited to have both of you here today. And I'd like to start off a little untraditionally, if you don't mind. You okay?
Absolutely.
Of course.
Okay. So I'll start with you, Dr. Campbell. Would you be willing to share with us something about yourself that people don't know, that they can't Google, they can't read about, that you normally don't share with people? And it doesn't have to be bad, but something about you that absolutely influenced who you are today and your success.
Wow. All right. The first thing that comes to mind that
You're next, Lauren. You just get to think longer.
that's a tough one. The first thing that comes to mind, and I don't necessarily talk to people about it, but if people ask me how I became a facial plastic surgeon, I always start with the fact that I was an artist, even as like a 2 and a 3-year-old. That was what I would do. I would sit there with a sketch pad and a pen or a pencil, and I was a very meticulous drawer, so that it was a very detailed drawing, and if it wasn't quite right, I'd erase and I'd make it absolutely perfect. So it wasn't a sketch where I'd use broad strokes and things. This was a very precise thing, and that was kind of the way that I did art all through my life. And I actually told my mom somewhere when I was like 9 or 10 years old that I wanted to become an artist, and she says, "Why don't you go be a doctor and you can do art as a hobby, because they don't call them starving artists for nothing." And I remember that. I mean, I think that was her exact words. And I know this was a long time ago. But I'm like, all right, my dad's a doctor, my brother's a doctor, my 2 sisters are pediatric dentists. They're all older than me. And so I thought, well, okay, I do good in science classes. I think I can go be a doctor, but I'm not going to be like an anesthesiologist, because that's what my dad and my brother are. I thought that was just about the most boring thing in the world, because I want to use my hands, So I decided I wanted to go into plastic surgery.
Wait a minute. The Ambu bag isn't using your hands?
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Wait a minute. Dr. Campbell, you said you were 2 or 3. Most people at 2 or 3, look at this. I have my little book here. When they're doing stuff, we call that doodling.
Yeah, I would draw like a cartoon figure that I saw on like a coloring book, but I would then draw it on a piece of paper. And then somebody said something about tracing. And I knew what tracing was, because you'd use really light paper that you could see through. And this was on like a regular sketch pad. I'm like, I didn't trace that. But that's how precise everything was. I'm not saying I was 3, but I swear I remember seeing a cartoon drawing that was really I knew exactly what it was. It was very precise. It looked exactly like, the cartoon, and it said age 3 on it. So maybe I was an old 3 and I was almost 4, but that was what I used to do. And even later in life, even in college, I was doing like banners. I painted a whole wall in one of my friends' dorm rooms with St. Pauli Girls label on it, and I did Spuds
Excuse me,
McKenzie, Bud
is that a
Light.
beer is that a Midwestern beer
That's a
label?
beer label. Yeah.
Just double checking. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, in full color, I just traced it on the wall and then started, coloring everything in.
Okay, so give me your profile to the right and give me your profile to the left. And the other side? Okay, I just wanted to make sure you weren't Van Gogh.
Oh, no infatuations with women where I sent my ear to them in the mail. No.
Well, they actually think he had Meniere's disease. Did you
Oh,
know that?
I did not.
That's this, but who knows? We don't, people just make that stuff up. All right, seriously though, what do you attribute that skill, that on some level, innate skill set to?
Heredity.
Well, who is the artist if everybody's a physician
My,
or
my dad, my dad was really good at art.
what type?
I have no idea. They divorced when I was pretty young. So,
Okay.
but he would make costumes for us. Like one year for Halloween, I was Snoopy, but I was his dog house. So he made the dog house out of like fiberboard and then put a Snoopy on top of it. You know how Snoopy slept on his back. So
Yes.
Snoopy's on the top, and I had a little mesh through like the dog door, and that would be my costume. And one year he made he actually made the Campbell soup cans out of like an industrial barrel, but he painted the Campbell soup label on there. And of course, my last name's Campbell. So I was too young for this, but my other, at the time, four siblings were each a different soup. And they had their heads sticking out of the can and this big can that they would walk around in. And then somehow I got a hold of some advertisement for Pringles that must have been a huge poster, and we could wrap it around the can, and then it became a Pringles can. But that one went over my head. So, but
Wow.
he did have an artistic ability.
Wow. There's also brilliance in that. That's not just a creative thought. There's absolutely brilliance in that. Wow. Did you know this, Lauren?
And sometimes I say I learn something new about him every day, and then I say I need photos to like see this.
Yes. Yes.
It keeps me on my toes.
What about you, Lauren?
I was sitting here and I'm like, I do not have an answer like that, but I think
Have you wrong? Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
I think a lot of people find it shocking sometimes to learn that I was in the Air Force for 8 years, and that was my background. And my background just keeps going. I mean, the Air Force then brought me into going to school for doing surgery, not a doctor, obviously, but a surgical technician. So I worked in the operating room. I worked on the donor team.
While you were in the Air Force.
No, ironically, in the Air Force, I was what they call knowledge operations management. I would like to consider it a little bit of a glorified secretary, but on Flightline, if I'm going to be honest. But it did make me realize, A, I do not want to be behind a computer every day, all day. Brought me to my next love of medical, because my family has a very extensive medical background. And I was like, I don't want to be a nurse. Like, I want to be in it. I want to be in, stomachs and doing open laparotomies and just like really exciting things like that. And after a while, I just, you don't get to connect with the patient or anything on that side, on the surgical tech side. It was, they reel the patient back and surgery's done and that's it. So, when I kind of started learning about the plastic surgery world, I basically found this job just on a whim. It was crazy, to be Dr. Campbell's surgical assistant, which then obviously led to this position now of being his patient care coordinator, which I think I'm much better at. I enjoy it a lot more.
Which you've graduated to being the surgical care coordinator.
Correct. So I put in about 2 years with him as his assistant, which I think is great because then I have the whole medical background too. I can talk to patients about it, with a little bit more of extensive knowledge on it. But yeah, now I'm here in this patient coordinator role, and this is a much better fit for me.
But you know what I just thought of? I don't know if you remember this. I know you remember this, Dr. Campbell. When you when you were speaking about being inside the patient, do you remember the magic school bus that would take you inside the body?
Yeah, Mrs. Fragile, I think it was, or
I don't know, but that's what I just, remember that? Yeah, that was so cool. All right. So one of the reasons why I'm so excited to have both of you on today is because no matter how amazing a surgeon Dr. Campbell is, he can't do it alone. And I want to make sure that the listeners or the people that are viewing, however people are listening to this podcast, get a sense of the team, or at least the head of the team, right? Because a business in a lot of ways is like a family, right? You have the parents and then you have everybody else, and it all starts at the top. And it is so evident that the two of you are so passionate about what you do. And it's really heartening because, truth be told, most people are just like that line from the movie, most men live their lives in, quiet desperation, going to work every day. And I think that was Richard Gere or somebody like that. Look at Dr. Campbell. He's even smiling because he knows that doesn't relate to him. All right.
Well, it's interesting that you use the words that you did because, years ago, we decided to write down our core values. And after having long discussions of who we are, we whittled them down to passion, relationships, and teamwork.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what we are. And that's everybody. So that's interesting. You used the word teamwork, you used the word passion. I don't know that you use the word relationship.
Passion.
That's a big part of what we do. I mean, it's amazing between the three of us, because I have an assistant, Jen, who works with me in the operating room, every day. And then Lauren is our surgical care coordinator. So I'm working with her every day. And Lauren and Jen work together as well for a lot of the things that we do for our patients. And it's an absolute team. And then we have obviously other people, from call center to the people that help with lights and lasers and some of the injectables and the body sculpting and management and finance. And, it's all a big team.
Okay, so you just said something that just made me go right to teamwork makes the dream work.
Yep.
So talk a little bit about how you went from being an artist, which is creative, to choosing the specialty of plastic surgery. Because truth be told, you're very humble and you make things sound so simple. But let's be honest, you're like the smartest guy in the class, and then you're the smartest guy in medical school. So what made you choose plastic surgery out of all the specialties? Because you could be an artist in other areas of medicine as well.
Well, I will tell you, growing up, and my dad wasn't really part of my life, so I didn't really have that daily medical, I guess, education. I knew what he did, but I didn't really know what other doctors did on a day-to-day basis. I knew a little bit of plastic surgery just because in general, you know that plastic surgeons do facelifts and they do breast augmentations and things. And you might know that when you're in middle school or certainly in high school, you would. So that was the one thing that I knew that I could use my creative, artistic ability, but I didn't know of anything else. And honestly, to this day, I don't know that there really is much else in medicine that's really
Ooh,
artistic. I
a
mean,
shot across the bow to the other specialties.
well, you might be able to be intellectually creative and intellectually artistic and from a thought process, but for being able to use your hands and do something that is artistic, I'm not sure there is anything else other than, I mean, you can get a little bit in dermatology and lights and lasers and injectables. You can be artistic in that way. So I'll give that from a filler perspective. But from a surgical perspective, it really is plastic surgery.
Good for you. So, Lauren, help us understand, what is it about Dr. Campbell, his work, and who he is that differentiates him from all the other plastic surgeons? Because you know a lot. You hear probably everything.
It's always a hard, because I get to work with him every day and I get to see just a different side to him as well. So I know where his heart is.
Wait. What's the difference? What's the different side?
I'm just saying, no one gets to know him from that very personal aspect as well. By day he has to be professional.
At night he's Andrew.
And at night But I mean, I think like where his head and his heart is at, just from being a surgeon. And I think you have to understand too, like I've worked with several surgeons. Again, I come from the operating room. That relationship that he establishes with his patients and how much he actually cares. It's hard sometimes. Sometimes you take things home, with yourself too. If a patient is never fully at that, if they're just going through it and their recovery, like we feel that we care about them, like, and he genuinely truly just like cares about his patients. And I don't feel like in these days you do really get like that one-on-one time with your surgeon or just like that caring nature anymore. There's definitely a bedside manner that comes with plastic surgery that's different from your standard, medical now these days. It's just
Mhm.
very, just front face. I'm here, I'm your surgeon, I'm going to do the work. With him, and he's really building a relationship all the way. I mean, we have patients, I've been here for now about 10 years, that have been seeing him for close to 15 years that are still coming back to see him saying, "Oh, I just love him so much. Oh, his personality." I mean, every time we jump off of a consultation call with a patient, first thing I ask, I'm like, what do you think of Dr. Campbell? Oh, he is just amazing. He is great. So like there's just a personality too that comes along with it, besides the fact of how great his work is too. And I think it's important to point out, like, he really does, practice what he preaches in terms of very, very natural results. That's what he wants to give patients. He wants them to look like themselves. He wants them to connect with them with their inner selves too. So just him practicing all the way around, like he truly is, like he does what he says. There's no fakeness to him. There's no lying. There's no making it sound better than what it can be. I mean, what he says is the truth when it comes to recovery and expectations. And I think that's really
Okay.
remarkable these days.
Okay. So basically, what you're saying, he's very authentic, and we
Yeah.
just have to make sure that the room can hold the ego after that beautiful statement. Here's my question to you, Dr. Campbell, though. Um, People seem to be more, people's expectations of everything in life seem to be more and more outrageous, if you will. And, can we be honest here? You can turn a beast into a beauty. You can just make them look better than the beast. That's so not nice, but there's different looks, right? So your your results don't lie, right? Like if you're authentic, you're not going to, I didn't know the correct word. You'll correct me. You're not going to be able to change the sculpture or the frame of, we'll say, a woman's face. So even if you tell them, I can do this and this and this, but their expectation is they're going to be a beauty pageant queen, and then the results are exactly what you said, and you make them look good, but it doesn't meet their expectations. How do you manage that?
It's a great question because that is one of the very most important things we need to do when we see a client or a patient who's interested in facial plastic surgery. I need to determine, do they have realistic expectations? Because if they don't, and I'm thinking they're going to get this, but they get that, I shouldn't say it that way. They're thinking they're going to get this, but I think they're going to get that, and I give them that. Well, that didn't match this, and so now
Right.
they're upset. It is in my business because I specialize in aging face. That's all I do. So I'm doing facelift.
Aging face. All righty then.
It is just aging face. So I will be honest with you. I don't know that I've come across more than one or two people in my entire career that
Oh, wow.
had an idea of what they were going to look like that was not exactly what I thought they were going to look like. So it's
Okay, but let me
extremely.
ask you: is that because is do you attribute? That's amazing to me. That's amazing to me. So, is that attributed to the fact that you are kindly and empathically yet brutally honest? Like you're able to talk them off the ledge, so to speak.
Um, Not really, honestly. What it is almost, I know you're surprised.
But
Uh,
Lauren looked like I want to hear Lauren's reaction. But go ahead.
About
well,
to have a coughing attack. I'm so sorry.
No, no, it's okay.
um, the far, far, far majority of my patients, they look in the mirror and they see somebody that doesn't match who they think they are inside their head, that sense of self. Their sense of self has been locked in at their 40-year-old face or their 45-year-old face. That's who they think they look like. Now they're 60 and they don't look like that person anymore. But inside, they still feel like that person. And so they look in the mirror and think, that can't be me. And so what I do is rejuvenate their face so that they look like they used to look. It's really honestly that simple. It's not easy to do it, but it's easy to talk about it. And if you take somebody and I hate to use this phrase, but I'm gonna because you're willing to say things you don't necessarily want to, but I'm gonna say this. The old adage of beauty is only skin deep. Well, as plastic surgeons, we also have the adage of beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes all the way to the bone.
You heard it here, folks.
So what that means is if you really truly want to change the way somebody looks, their facial appearances, you're going to go down basically to the bone. Doesn't mean that we're necessarily working on the bone, but things like, implants, whether it's chin implants, cheek implants, there's jaw implants, there's all kinds of different things. That's going to change the overall shape of somebody's face. Can I use fat and use that as like a fat transfer and do something similar? Absolutely. But and I'm saying 99.9% of my patients, they don't want to look different. They just want to look like themselves, only the way that they used to look. So do I do fat grafting? I do it all the time. But it's for people because they've lost their fat in their face due to aging. I'm not trying to make them look different. I'm trying to give them back the volume they used to have when they were 45 or 40, and now they're 60, or in their mid 50s, or, my average is somewhere in the mid 50s is my typical patient.
Okay, I actually want to go a little bit deeper, and you might not see it as a plastic surgeon question, but I feel it's relevant. You said plastic surgeons go to the bone, right? And
Well, I said ugly goes down to the bone.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, excuse me. We can edit that if you want. Okay, ugly. You said ugly goes down to the bone. Where I went with that right away is who the person is, regardless of their physical features, right? So if you meet, let's say Lauren tells you, oh, you have to meet my friend. She's absolutely beautiful, blah, 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 blah. And you meet the friend and you're like, all right, scale of 1 to 10, maybe she's a 6. But then you get to know her friend. And then you find yourself saying to Heidi, your wife, oh, you have to meet Lauren's friend. She's beautiful. Because you've picked up on the beauty of her soul.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Does this apply at all? And how do you work with that? How do you manage that? Because even people want to look like they used to look. Sometimes people have a distortion in the other direction too.
Well, let me start by saying ugly is an ugly word, and I would never use it to describe anybody. It was literally just a phrase that's more of a joke, but it has some sense of truth to it due to the fact of anatomy. But yes, it's absolutely the person. And this also goes back to the same thing that I was talking about. They have a sense of self in their head. They know what they look like. But when they don't look like that, they don't have a very good relationship with themselves because of the fact that the outside does not match their psyche. And so now they're kind of struggling in this situation where they don't even like themselves, but they used to, and they might have been this most bubbly person that everybody loved when they walked into the room, and now they're a little bit more reserved because they're not so confident, and it changes them a little bit. And I've seen countless people come back and their personalities, I can see it. I mean, not like I know them that well. It's not like I'm spending all this time with them. I mean, I've met them a handful of times and I can tell in their post-op that they're back to their normal personality because they're like bubbly and they're excited and they're talking, their head's higher, they're looking you more in the eye. Just they're more confident is the bottom line.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Lauren, can you expand on everything Dr. Campbell said? Because I'm sure you're there navigating all of this as well.
Yeah. I mean, for my position too, I get to see patients a lot postoperatively. And it really does come down to confidence and how they're feeling. And, we have a lot of patients that will come and sit in my office and break down in tears over how they feel about their looks, saying they don't they don't want to be in photos anymore. They're not taking photos with their grandchildren. But to see them come back and feel like they have this completely changed just personality and everything. I mean, they'll tell us, I'm back on the dating. A lot of them are going through divorces, or a lot of people come in for that. But that they just feel confident to be back in the dating field again, and meeting people, and they feel like their best self. Um, going back out with their friends and everything. So it really just is, like I kind of touched base on before, this inner connection that's not connecting while you feel like you're aging, but bringing them back to themselves. Like, we really are just bringing them back to who they once were. And it's a beautiful thing to see.
Well, what I love about what both of you are saying is that you're really listening to what the patient wants, and yet you're being realistic if it doesn't match what you can do. Um, so, so, so Dr. Campbell, share with us your most incredible successful transformation and how that impacted your client, right? Because somebody comes in, they're not feeling good about themselves. Maybe they are going through a divorce. Usually they're trying to lose weight at the same time. So they probably go from you to lose weight. That might be another revenue stream for you.
Right.
um, and you, your, your treatment of them might actually be the best thing that's happened to them in a long time.
I don't even know where to start. I have so many patients that are
I
like,
know, I was trying to think.
it's honestly the majority of them. When patients come in, I will tell you this much. When patients come in and they look older than their chronological age, they are ripe for a massive amount of psychological improvement. It's incredible because I'm going to swing them from one end of the pendulum all the way to the other one, and those are usually the ones that really have a really significant amount of change in their confidence. But I can remember it's got to be 20 years ago. Um, a lady came in and she looked older than she was, and we talked, and she was able to do basically everything that I recommended, which means everything. We did a brow lift and an eye lift and a facelift and fat grafting and a laser resurfacing. We did everything because that's what she needed. And she was one who came in. I swear, I describe it like she was floating on air when she came walking down the hallway to come into the exam room for her post-op visit. And she was just bubbly. And I was pretty young at the time, and I remember looking at her and saying, "What is so different? Like, what did I do?" I didn't use those words. I just said, "What is so different?" Because she's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so amazing." And I go, "What is so different?" And she paused for a second and she goes, "You gave me back to myself." And I said, "What do you mean by that?" And she gives me the story of she would walk in a parking lot, and if she saw her reflection in a car window next to her, it would startle her because she thought it was somebody else. Like somebody snuck up on her, and she would get startled, and she goes, "That's because I didn't recognize myself." And now she basically used the words, "I'm back." And I'm like, "This is fascinating." I was like, I finally understand why I do what I do.
I was going to say it's a little bit more on the emotional side, but we did have a patient that lost a child, and just the traumaticness of it, going through all of that, it took years. It added on years, I should say. And just that despair. And when she went through her transformation and everything, I mean, the first thing she said is, when I look in the mirror, I don't see that grief anymore. Like, I can
Was
finally
she
come
still
out.
married? Because usually when people lose a child, that marriage they get divorced.
She
So
was
it
not.
was a lot. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so it's just going through all of that. But I think, like, from me, I'm like such an empath and everything from that emotional side. Just hearing her say that she can look in the mirror and finally kind of come out on the other end, to not see that grief, to not have those memories, because her face was a reminder of kind of what she went through and experiencing every day.
I got
So,
goosebumps on that one. I got
so I
goosebumps.
love those ones. I mean, it's just I'm telling you, you build such a relationship with these patients. It's hard not to get, drawn into it.
Okay, so I have two questions. I'm not sure where I want to go first. Okay, here I'll go. So got Dr. Campbell, what do you say to people that say we shouldn't be focused on external beauty. It's only the internal beauty that counts. And we spend way too much time and money and effort worrying about external beauty.
I would say that
That's Bill.
Wait, what'd you say, Lauren?
I said, says who? Who said
Oh,
that?
okay.
Don't listen.
I would answer that with we're hardwired for beauty. And, being a Christian, I think God hardwired us for a reason. And it isn't to discriminate, but he wants us to see the beauty in the world and the beauty in each other. And yes, some of that beauty is internal, but some of it's also external. So there's been a bunch of studies done over many different years in many different situations about what most would consider an attractive candidate and what most would consider an average candidate. And the more attractive person gets the job offering, gets a higher
Mhm.
salary,
Mhm.
gets a bunch of other privileges, simply because they've done these studies for like applying to jobs with identical resumes, identical, syntax and their verbal cues, and they're trying to make everything, even their nonverbal cues to try to be exactly the same, but one's attractive and the other one's not so much, and the attractive person routinely, wins out. So
Mhm.
I think it's we can call it a prejudice, or we can just say we're hardwired for it, and it is what it is.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that. I mean, my feeling is, any asset you have, anything that you can do to enhance your life, and if that includes your beauty, who doesn't want to be surrounded by beauty? And who do we look at more than anybody
Yeah.
else? Even though we try not to. If you walk through the streets of a city and you go by anything that shows a reflection, it doesn't have to be a mirror. You will see people.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Lauren, did you want to comment?
Think from a standpoint, I think aging process is really difficult, and I don't think any of us are prepared for what that actually looks like.
Mhm.
And we all tell ourselves when we're younger. I used to say it. I would never do anything, or I would tell my mom, "You're beautiful." Just. And now looking at it as I want you to do what makes you feel better about yourself, because clearly it is something that bothers you. Um, but no one's prepared for it. And if it's something that bothers you, then I truly believe you deserve to do that for yourself.
Yeah,
Honestly.
it's a gift. It's a gift. I mean, I wake
Yeah.
up, I look in the mirror, I'm like, that's my mom. Mom, what are you doing here? You've been dead. Yeah, here's a difficult question. I would imagine that people that don't take good care, as good care of themselves as perhaps we would like to, if you smoke, if you drink excessively, how does that change the challenge that you're dealing with?
I will be honest with you. I've seen all kinds of issues exactly like you mentioned, but I've also seen beautiful women that were smokers their entire life and they look younger than they are. Now I think they're the exception to the rule. I think that more people like here's a great example. When somebody comes in with lip lines, they got deep lines around their mouth. They're
Yes.
the far majority of those patients are not smokers, and they're basically furious with the fact that they have these lines because they're a non-smoker, and
Oh, wait, those come from smoking? I thought that comes from,
they
like,
will a lot of
fresh.
people well, they do, but a lot of people will call them smokers lines.
Oh, I never heard that. Ooh,
Yeah,
Really?
that that
no,
is a term.
I don't know a lot.
So patients will come in being upset that they have smokers lines, and they're not a smoker. So
I
yes, I certainly agree that excessive sun exposure over long periods of time, smoking over long periods of time, do bad things to our faces, and they make you age prematurely. But genetics has a tremendous amount of impact on this over, I think, pretty much anything else.
Yeah, I do have an academic question for you. I read this the other day, and I'd like to know if it's true that the majority of our facial skin damage happens from 7 to 12 years old.
I've never read that, but I will tell you that the majority of what you see as sun damage happened decades ago. So yes, you could have had poor, sun protection. I'm not sure about 7 to 12, but certainly 12 to 24, in those teenage years when you're out with your baby oil trying to get
Literally.
yep.
Hmm.
And you're getting burned and it's not good for your skin. And when you're in your 30s, most people, their skin looks pretty darn good still, even though they might have abused it when they were in their teens. But when they're in their 40s, now you start to see some of that sun damage come to the surface, and you're starting to notice the changes that were really, maybe you started wearing sunblock religiously at age 30. Well, now you're 40 wondering why you're getting all these things that are visible. It's like because you abused it when you were in your teenage years, and now it's all becoming visible. And there's all kinds of non-surgical things that we can do to help combat that and make your skin stay looking good. And the easiest is broadband light. And you do 2 of those a year, and you'll probably not see that sun damage come to the surface. You just do it. Just like going to the dentist and getting your teeth cleaned.
Okay, so that actually leads me to a question that I understand you have products that a product line that is coming out,
Yep.
right? Because I would imagine it matters how your skincare treatment, is that the right way to say it? So
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about your product, how that differentiates from what's on the market. Many times I know I'm using now a product that says, dermatologist approved. I think that just means it costs 200 more dollars. Like I don't know. So tell us about your products so that people can be educated. Later on, they'll find out where they can get yours. But what should they be looking for? Like we're learning more and more how to read labels in food. So let's read labels in our skincare product.
I will be really honest with you. Reading labels in skincare is a daunting task. There are so many different things. Basically, our skincare line that we've now formulated has here, let me give you a background. When I was very young and I didn't know a lot about skincare, I knew I needed to get some skincare in my office because the patients that I treated for like a lot of sun damage or wrinkles, they wanted skincare and they needed skincare.
Mhm.
So I started out with a line that was pretty neutral. It wasn't very strong. And lots of my patients would break through and they'd have issues with their skin despite using this skincare. So then I found a line that was very medical and very lab oriented and had these ingredients that were basically medications in it. And I found that, yes, it worked, but a lot of people reacted to it in a negative way and they weren't able to tolerate it.
Could you
So,
could you buy those products over the counter even if they had
no,
medication? No, it had to be prescribed. Okay.
yeah, those are only in a doctor's office. Both of them actually were. So one, I would argue anything that's a medical grade skincare, it doesn't necessarily have to be only sold by a doctor, but it needs to have the ingredients that are medical grade. That is where you want to be. But because I had these two opposing things, one's not strong enough, one's too strong, I I tried to go down the path of we need a little bit of science, but I want a lot of natural as well. So
Mhm.
instead of formulating something just in the lab and saying I want coenzyme Q and these other ingredients and this and that to be able to make my skincare, I actually started with the natural side and I actually went through kind of a process with some different formulary people. One guy being he's unfortunately passed away, but he'd been in the skincare industry for decades. He was in his 90s. And he was going to start going down the path of looking at this fruit called sea berry, and it's out of like uh, the Himalayan area. And when Alexander the Great was kind of conquering all of Europe and Asia, um, his his soldiers noticed that their coats became very shiny and healthy looking, and they attributed it to the fact that these horses were eating these berries. So they've now done all this lab work on sea berry, and they've shown that it has 70 times the antioxidant power of vitamin C. It's got multiple different omega fatty acids in it that are all going to be nourishing to your skin, your hair, and so that's really where we started. And then we've taken the science in the lab and added that together so that we have a product that's very easy to tolerate on the skin, but should also be very nourishing and protective of the skin and make your skin much healthier. So that's kind of where we're at.
Is that a
Um,
foundational cream?
it
Is
is
it
it is it's a 4 product system, from cleanser to retinol oil to moisturizer, and those all go together, so that, and then we also have actually a sea berry supplement. So my idea was, the skin is on our bodies to protect to protect us from things
that is like
outside.
the largest organ in the body, right? Or something
It's
like
the
that?
largest by weight, yep,
Yep.
in the body. And it's obviously a living organ, and its job is to prevent things from getting into our bodies. It protects us, so that if you touch something, it just doesn't go into your bloodstream and, basically toxify your system. So it's not that easy to get things to penetrate through skin. Now, they've done all kinds of different things, and we've done things in our own to make it better. But obviously, ingesting something through your mouth, your body digests it and it gets into your bloodstream, and now your liver's going to get rid of things that are bad. But if we can actually take sea berry, which doesn't taste very good, you put it in a capsule form so you don't have to taste it. It's actually a little gel cap. You can get sea berry into your system, and now I basically describe it as we're hitting the skin from both sides. So we have our skincare coming in from the outside. We have the supplements coming in from the inside. We also have a collagen supplement, because I think most my older patients, I put that in quotes, don't eat near the amount of protein that they should. And so they're starting to degrade simply because of the fact that they're just a little bit malnourished in that way. So I feel like adding to their protein and collagen content's a good thing as well. So that's kind of the package that we've created.
Is that available now? Or
Very close.
oh well,
I'm I'm hoping in Q1 of 2025, we will have it available to ship.
okay. We'll
We're
follow up
very,
with
very
that.
close.
We'll follow. Lauren, you have gorgeous skin. Am I allowed to ask you if you've been a client of Dr. Campbell's?
I use our skincare. I have not yet had, well, he did a erbium around my eyes, which is a laser resurfacing. So we did that procedure, which is obviously for fine lines, wrinkles. It was great. I'm very Irish, so I had the lines even at 35. But also I'm very on top of my skincare regimen. Obviously I have the power to kind of have lasers done and the BBL. So I'm very blessed on that sense that I work in this environment. But skincare is so important, and you have to have like a nighttime or a daytime and a nighttime. So I am on top
Mhm.
of that. Best thing you could do, in the interim before you kind of go into a little bit more of like the cosmetic side too.
Okay, great. So, Dr. Campbell, I understand, and I want you to share with us, what your goal is. I understand that you are the best kept secret for the rest of the country. Everybody knows you in the Midwest. So, what is your goal for expanding your practice? Because someone like you, with your gifts, your passion, your talent, really, people need to know about you. So, where do you want to go, and how do you want to reach people there?
Well, let me start by saying I remember my mom also telling me I must have come home from baseball one day and bragged about, or football, something I did in sports. Like, I did something. And my mom looked at me and she goes, "You really shouldn't brag. If you're that good, other people will talk about you." And
Mhm.
so I've been a very humble person. I mean, I don't tend to express like what I can do from a surgical perspective.
By the way, excuse me, Dr. Campbell, for people listening, if you're not watching this, his assistant Lauren is shaking her head saying, yes, Dr. Campbell's a very humble person. Go ahead.
So it is kind of difficult for me to toot my own horn, so to speak. So I've always been one to let my surgery speak for itself. It has, and I'm very busy and successful, and have, thousands of happy facelift patients. I I started lecturing to other plastic surgeons nationally and internationally. It's got to be getting close to 20 years ago. So I've spread my own knowledge to people, and sometimes they're kind of amazed at what I do, because I do it differently and in even different ways. So, I have my own facelift technique, and it is different than what other people do. So
Well, it's your, what's it, your artistry.
And that was something that's honestly taken me 15 years to kind of master. It's like, was I a good facelift surgeon 20 years ago? Absolutely. Was I a fantastic facelift surgeon? I wouldn't say fantastic, but I was really good. Patients were very happy. I got really good results. If somebody was extremely challenging, did I get a perfect result? No, but they were super happy because I got them 95% of the way there, or 90%
Mhm,
of the way
mhm.
there. I knew there was a little bit extra that I could do. And so then you start to modify things and you start to change it to the point where now I feel like I have gotten to
You're
the,
a master. You're a master.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Black belt in facial plastic surgery.
Right. But so Dr. Campbell, to play along the lines of being humble, which absolutely anybody listening to this can hear that, can see that. What if I said to you, it's your responsibility to let the rest of the country know about you?
Well, the reason I kind of brought up the history is I have friends who are world famous. You know, they see movie stars, they see billionaires from around the world. Um, and they're guys that also are on stage with me at these meetings, and I'm giving facelift talks and they're giving facelift talks. And I've even had people come to me and critique my results compared to their results. And they're basically saying, you know, your results are on par with theirs. And, you know, then they'd ask me some questions, and I'm like, well, why am I in Milwaukee? You know, that's a question I get all the time. And it's because I chose to raise my family there. And here I am. And now, after these years of honing this skill, I feel like now it's kind of time to release it upon the entire world. And I would like to do that through people like you and our podcasts, and getting the word out in that kind of way through social media. I mean, I've never been one to be on social media. I don't like promoting myself, but I feel like it's kind of time, so I have other people egging me on to do this, and they're
Mhm.
going to have to egg me on because I'm not going to want to do it on my own. So it's like, your job is to make sure that I do what I need to do to be able to get the word out.
Okay, so I'm going to guess you decided to raise your family in Milwaukee. Is that because that's where your family is? Do you have other family members around there?
So my wife's family is from Milwaukee, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so it's the
But we
family
both
values.
I grew up in Southern Indiana. You know, I
Same difference.
Yeah, exactly. And I
If you're
trained
from the
in
East Coast,
Cincinnati.
it's the same
It is.
difference.
You know, if you're not in Chicago and you're in the Midwest, it's like you're in the Midwest. And when I finished my training, I remember sitting down with my wife, and we could go anywhere in the country. We honestly could.
Right.
And we were trying to figure out, we already had 2 kids, and ultimately we have 4. So it's like we needed to consider, them in our decision making. And ultimately, we really wanted to stay in the Midwest. And we ended up back up into the Milwaukee area. And that was honestly by chance. There just happened to be a really good opportunity where I could take over this and I could own it, so that I wasn't told what to do. I could do whatever I wanted to do, which is exactly what I'm doing today. And it just doesn't happen. You have to work, that ship is sailing, and you've got to keep it in that direction for like a 5 to 10 years before
That
you're
actually
doing
that
what you
actually
want to do.
that actually reminds me, you never once said the name of your practice. So I'd like you to talk about this as we wrap this up. I want you to unabashedly promote yourself. And if you drop the ball, I will have Lauren pick it up. Let people know about your practice. Let them know what you and your team offer. Give them all the links. And I would like you to also tell New York snobs, self included, West Coast snobs, why they should come, get on a plane to Milwaukee. It's probably a direct flight. It's not a big deal, and come see you in your practice. I almost said the name, but I want you to say it.
All right. So my practice used to be Campbell Facial Plastic Surgery when I started. And we quickly realized that, and this is back in like 2001, um, we realized that skincare alone is not going to solve a lot of my patients' skin problems. I was doing chemical peels. They were giving people, a week or sometimes a month or 2 of kind of downtime. And we realized these newer lasers like intense pulse light, and now we have broadband light with Cyton. These devices can do things that I can't with chemicals or surgery. So now we have a device, and now we have the opportunity to have others involved. So like laser specialists, we have nurses, estheticians that do lasers. As time went on, obviously Botox and filler is a huge part of aesthetic medicine. Um, Nurses can be trained to be fantastic nurse injectors. So we only use nurses for injectors, but that's all they do. So we're a team of specialists. And as time went on, I realized I can't call it Campbell facial plastic surgery because we're so much more than just facial plastic surgery. So we had to come up with a name for our kind of medical spa slash aesthetic center. And I came across the name Quintessa at a wine shop because it's a wine out of California. And I thought that was a really cool name because it reminded me of the word quintessential, but it ends with an essa, which makes it sound like a female name. So, like, that's really cool. And I looked it up on Google, and this is back in like 2005. So this is 20 years ago. And it came back with a response of back in the day, everybody knew that everything was made out of the four elements of earth, wind, water, and fire. But they also knew there was something more, something above that that you couldn't see. And I'm like, and that was the fifth element or the quintessential element that's above everything else. And I thought, that's the coolest thing in the world. I'm going to name my company Quintessa.
Well, what is that element?
The fifth element. It's just this this thing that back in the day they didn't know what it was. It's not really one thing. It's the fifth element, something above. They knew there was something more than the four
It's
elements.
probably energy, some type of energy
Exactly.
is my guess. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I love that.
And then why would they want to come and see me? And here's the
And Lauren.
well, absolutely. She's a very significant part of this process. I'll just tell you a story of a patient who was from Wisconsin. I did her face. She's super happy. She would, and I won't use the name of the city in Florida, but it was a city in Florida where she would winter. And she looked fantastic. She was super happy, super confident. And then she would have her friends go, like, what are you doing? Why do you look so good? And she said, well, I saw Dr. Campbell up in Milwaukee. And they go, well, I don't want the name of the city facelift. All right. Because everybody that got a facelift in that city looked like they had a facelift. And my patients don't look like they had a facelift. They just look like themselves only, 20 years ago. And they look fantastic and natural. So then I start seeing people of friends or sisters of patients. So, I mean, I have people from Florida come up. I have people from California. I have people from New York, and it's just by word of mouth is
Canada.
and Lauren actually came up with the term Midwest facelift. And I'm not sure I really want to use it, but I think there's a difference where if you want to look like yourself, if you don't want to go back into your social circles and everybody be blatantly aware that you went and had something done, I get to confuse lots of people around the country because they look at my patients and they're like, I know something's different because they look fantastic, but I don't see anything that makes me think they had surgery. So what am I going to say? And they don't know what to say. They're friends. And
I like when you said Midwest facelift. When I hear Midwest, to me that conjures up wholesome goodness, like the qualities of like the American farmer. I don't think anybody would have problem with that, but I do think that's very enticing. Like even I know there's the New York facelift. There's the California facelift.
Yeah.
I did not know there was a Florida facelift. I will be looking for it on the street of Naples. Not that you said that, I said that. I will be looking for it when I'm down on Fifth Avenue. Okay, so
they're pretty easy to see.
They are? Okay. I'm on it. I'm on it. So tell people where they can find out more about you. If you do have any social media presence, if you do have any links, website, unabashedly promote yourself.
Yeah, it's mycontessa.com is our website, and it has everything about what we do, and it has information about me. My Instagram is @thefacedoc.
Okay. And how active are you on there?
I will be
We're getting them.
active. I'm not all that active.
Okay, and my Quintessa is, I just want to spell it for the listeners, MY QUINTESSA.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Contessa.
And our main Instagram for the company is at my Q Spa. Just for that.
Oh, Lord, you got to get this organized. There's too many different, even I know that. Okay. What is it? My Q
My Q
Spa.
Spa. Mhm.
Okay. All right. And we'll inform the listeners when everything becomes a coherent, consistent packaging.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. One more question. You ready? Okay. So again, I'll let Dr. Campbell go first because
Thanks.
but you have to, yeah. Okay. So imagine there's a huge box in front of you, huge, and everything you've ever lost in your life is in that box. What's the first thing you would reach for and why?
Do you do this to everybody?
I'm
Only people I like.
gonna have a coughing attack again.
You know what I immediately thought of is I'm going to use the word my innocence, and I use that
That
because
counts.
like my dad divorced. I had to let one of my best friend since I was a kid. I had to walk away from because of the fact that he got involved in drugs, and unfortunately now he's passed away.
Because of that?
Yes,
Uh,
yes. Um, and I feel like, you take these psychological tests in business classes and things, and one of my things is like self-preservation, and I score it like a 98%. And I'm like, but I care about other people. What does that mean? And I feel like it's those things in my life that made me, I guess, say I've got to protect myself. So it's like I feel like that's my innocence. Like I lost something in the past, it changed who I was. And
it's
that's
the hard choices. You'll make the hard choices. That's the self-preservation.
yeah.
Yeah, I think. So your innocence.
That's
I don't
That's
know
a
not
if I
fair
great
have
because
the
I
right
wouldn't
answer.
word.
want.
You might be able to have a better word than that, but that's what popped into my head. I mean, physical things. I had a little Pooh Bear like Winnie the Pooh when I was a kid. That would be really cool to kind of have. But
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
no,
think
you
that.
answered it. You answered it. So is it
All right.
your naivete? Is it your naivete or your wonder of the world?
Maybe it's that I'm maybe probably a little too self protective, that I'm not putting myself out there. I mean, maybe that's part of the reason I'm not promoting myself so much.
Well, there you have it.
I don't know. I love your
Yeah. We'll
psychological
talk more.
questions. I'm very open about this stuff. It's like I'm happy to talk about just about anything.
I actually would have to think more about that, but we'll do that maybe for another time if we have a part two.
All right.
Lauren, go.
I would have lined up with him. Now I wish I would have went first because I would have said more of my.
No, say what you were going to say, not what he said.
No, I was thinking I had to think about it, but I'm saying like personally, like out of all the things, like I'm the same way. Material things, materialistic things, don't care about that. For me, it would be, I guess, time spent with family that I lost. That's probably what I would look for, truthfully. Family,
Yeah.
very important family members that I have lost. I always would look for more time.
So you're both such people, which resonates with the business that you're in.
Yeah.
To be, have to have heart and soul in this. That's for sure.
That's right. A little bit of heart and soul. The song, isn't it? Yeah, it is. All right. So thank you so much, Dr. Campbell, for your time and Lauren for your time and quite honestly for just being who you are. Um, I, people don't get enough of these feel-good interviews where people have combined their passion and their talents and their intellect. So, and you make the world a more beautiful place. What's not to love? So thank you. Thank you so much. And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And that concludes today's podcast episode. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. And until next time, be well.